serving 8 years in India, 4 years at the Italian Embassy and 4 years here at the European Union office and as ambassador of European Union to India. He has finished his term, and what a grand way of finishing his term with a successful G20. I'm being joined by Ambassador Ugo Astuto. Many thanks for joining us here in India today, sir. Let's begin with your stint. How was your stint as the European Union ambassador here? What were the achievements? What was the experience of India as an envoy?
Well, thank you very much. I think I was very lucky to serve in India as UN envoy for the past 4 years, because this has been a period of where the relationship with the strategic partnership has taken great strides forward. Clearly, I finished with this great event, with the G20 Summit, but even before that, I think these 4 years you can see a number of very important steps being taken. Let me remind the Porto Summit in 2021, with a very particular format where all member states were represented, and where the key decision was taken to resume the FTA conversation talks. And then the setting up of the Trade and Technology Council, I think another landmark in our relationship. And so many visits by the President of the Commission, for instance, in 2022. Now we have the 2 presidents visiting, and quite a number of commissioners during the G20 and before. So I think this was a period where really we have seen our relationship grow fast and expand. Not just trade and economic matters, political matters, how to work together to address global challenges, climate change, the digital transition. I think we clearly have converging interests besides shared values as democracies, and we are starting to make this relationship not just broad, but very concrete and operational.
You're also here at very challenging times, COVID-19 pandemic, the Russia-Ukraine war, the kind of conversations that you've had with India on oil. What were your biggest challenges?
Well, look, I think the potential of the strategic partnership between the EU and India is really vast. So I would say that the challenge is to translate this into operational targets. It's not always easy, but look at the facts. We are 2 of the largest democratic spaces, 2 of the largest economic blocs. India is the 5th largest world economy, and on its way to become the 3rd largest. And the European Union is the largest trading bloc worldwide. And we have such a consolidated network of people-to-people contacts, be it in terms of academic studies, professional professional activities, or simply for leisure. So I think we have in a way to do as institutions what our people, what our citizens are already doing, and makes this network even tighter.
Right, but in terms of the fact that we are looking at forging ahead when it comes to India-EU ties, how do you see that move ahead, specifically to do with the bilateral?
Yes. Well, I think I refer again to the fact that we have shared values as democracies, and we have convergent interests in addressing global challenges in a way which is consistent with our values as democratic countries, open societies. So I'm thinking here about the digital transition, for instance. We want to foster innovation. We want to promote a competitive environment, and we also want to protect the individual rights of our citizens, for instance, in terms of data protection. So I think we have an interest in sharing our respective experiences and see how we can work together in shaping the global agenda when it comes to the digital transition.
Ambassador Astuto, you're talking about digital transformation, and that is an opportunity, but are there other opportunities or ideas that you think are untapped, that European Union and India should be looking at and should be tapping, because this is the time to do it?
Well, I mentioned earlier climate change. Climate change means also a profound transformation of our industrial setting, as well as individual consumption patterns. we need to adopt greener technologies. We need to look for a greener energy mix. India has invested heavily in renewables, and you have launched a very ambitious green hydrogen mission. So I think this is the sort of topics where the EU and India can work together in their bilateral relationship, and at the same time in helping the international community to focus on this existential challenge. And they need to come up soon, now, with practical and operational solutions. That's why also the TTC has put green technology at the core of its conversation.
Right, that's quite interesting, and also the fact that India has been pushing for this fight against climate change. But let's move on to the summit now, the G20 Summit, conclusion of the G20 Summit with a joint communique. Just some days ago when I was speaking to you, there were concerns. I spoke to so many ambassadors, all of them had concerns about having a joint communique. Now it finally is there. What do you think the role India played in this joint communique? And is it because the presidency was with India that they could manage it in such challenging times? Was there any other member state that could have managed a joint communique in such times within the G20?
Well, I think India deserves to be congratulated. It was not an easy task. We are not living a business as usual situation. And clearly India has a special convening power. So I think it has achieved quite a feat, not just when it comes to climate change or the digital transition, but also on topics such as women's empowerment. I think India has really played a key role in bringing together the international community at a time where we really need to get our act together to address global challenges. So my answer is that India has proved again to be a particularly able convener, and particularly it has been particularly adept in making convergence work, including in a setting such as the G20, which definitely is key for the international community, for the future of the international community and our collective ability to address global challenges.
How difficult were the negotiations? Because the paragraphs on Russia-Ukraine war, Ambassador, were watered down. They were different from the Bali Declaration. Was it very difficult to get a difficult and tough language against Russia in?
Look, I think we have to look at the text, and we see that there are very important facts and principles in this text. You see a call for respect of the UN Charter in its entirety, respect of sovereignty and territorial integrity. You see the very clear mention that the threat of using nuclear weapons is inadmissible. You see a call for respect of international humanitarian law and for a peace which is just and durable and upholding the principle and values of the UN Charter. So I think if you look at the text, there are very important principles and facts that are in line with the UN resolutions, which incidentally are also mentioned in the text. And all this has been subscribed by the whole membership, by all G20 members. So I think it's a very significant text that deserves to be read with attention.
Okay, but Ukraine is disappointed. The American president has had a huge or a very difficult time with his own press, asking very tough questions. Ukraine has actually said that the outcome is nothing to be proud of. How will the war efforts or the efforts towards fighting the war with Ukraine and supporting Ukraine then move forward? Because Ukraine already has said that they're very disappointed in the outcome of the G20.
Well, as to the war efforts, I can only confirm that the European Union is going to continue to support Ukraine as much as we can in the various dimensions, be it politically, be it economically, or with the supply of weapons and ammunition. I mean, it's a fight of Ukraine, it's a fight for freedom, for the respect of the UN Charter, and it has our full support, and this will remain.
Okay. The other aspect was, when it comes to the G20, inclusivity. And we have spoken about the fact that Prime Minister Modi and the G20 India presidency focused on bringing in the voice of the Global South. In that, Ambassador, how do you look at African Union's admission to the G20?
I think it's a major success of the Indian presidency to have brought the African Union in the framework of the G20. I think Africa will definitely bring a very significant added value to the discussion. In the margin of the G20, actually, the European Union, the two presidents, President Michel and President von der Leyen, had a meeting with the African Union, with African participants, and with the EU member states attending the event. And it was a celebration and also a clear indication of the importance we attach to this relationship and to the presence of the African Union in. We are neighbors to Africa, and we strongly believe that Africa, the future of the world in a way, is also being shaped in Africa today.
All right. How were the deliberations between Prime Minister Modi and the presidents of the European Union and the European Commission? Did it go well?
It did go very well, a very cordial and friendly meeting where all the aspects of the relationship were recalled, at least the main aspect of our relationship. Some we have already mentioned here, the FTAs, the TTC, the work together in climate change, the digital transition, and this major endeavor which has been celebrated at the G20, which is this economic corridor, this India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, a very significant development there, which again will bring together India, the European Union, the US, and the Middle East. I think something to be watched very closely.
I was just going to come to that, the IMEC corridor. How significant is that? How feasible is that? Where is the funding going to come from? How do we look at it? Because many are looking at it as a counter to China's BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative that also is working towards this connectivity, but is not democratic, does not allow the kind of space that an IMEC, that's India, Middle East, Europe corridor, will allow. So how is this going to allow economic growth, spreading of equality, equal distribution, and democracy?
Yes, well, I think we have to look at this initiative on its own merit. So it's about infrastructure, it's about transport, it's about energy, it's about digital connectivity. And the principles underpinning this initiative are principles of transparency, of inclusivity. It's about meeting the needs of the people first and foremost in full transparency. And all parties together agree on these principles. I'm sure you are familiar with the Global Gateway Initiative, which has been launched by the President of the European Commission in 2021. So we have set aside 300 billion of investment that will be used between 2021 and 2027, precisely in infrastructure which responds to this basic criteria. So I think the new economic corridor fits very well into the framework of the Global Gateway.
Is there a time frame?
For this corridor, well, we are starting now. I'm sure there will be discussion going on soon. I think the determination, which is shared by all participants, is to make this operational as soon as we can.
On that note, Ambassador Astuto, many thanks for joining us over here on India Today, and wishing you the best for all your future endeavors. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's the Ambassador of the European Union to India, Ambassador Ugo Astuto, giving one of his maybe last interviews before he leaves town and spelling out the importance of EU-India ties. With video journalist Sachin Chandok in New Delhi, Geeta Mohan for India Today.